Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode with Norris Bodies. Today I have Mr. Austin Jones with me, and last time we did a podcast together, he was going into his 2023, actually in the middle, right, of your 2023 season.
Yeah.
And went to North Americans last year, and we went through quite a roller coaster there at the very end. He ultimately didn't do well at North Americans last year, and from the day that he left, he told me that he wanted to go back this year and get his revenge. And that's exactly what he did. So you're looking at Norris Body's newest IFBB Pro, Austin Jones. Couldn't be prouder of him. But anyway, today I wanted to just go over, to make sure I clear my throat and sip my coffee for Zach Suggs. We're both going to be clearing our throat and sipping our coffee today. Loudly.
Slurp the coffee for Zach.
Yeah, loudly into the microphone.
Yes.
So, Austin, just talk a little bit about last year. Obviously, we're big on conditioning. That's kind of our creed as a team, is to come in conditioned. Talk a little bit about last year, where you feel you peaked, where you feel things started slipping away and the body stopped responding, and why.
2023 was a pretty rigorous season. In the whole calendar year, there were 5 shows in the calendar of that year. We finished off the 2022 with the Night of Champions, and then from there it was
Which you won.
Which I won.
Overall classic.
And then it was game time. I hit the ground running to prep for Masters Nationals. That was the planned show. It was mapped out, Masters Nationals, and then if that didn't go the way we wanted to, we'd carry it over and right there close enough to 2 weeks later go to the Tennessee State Championships. So this is known now, but we just randomly on a whim went to Battle of the River last year, just out of nowhere. I was stagnant. I needed something different, something motivating, and something exciting. So we drove down there on the day of and signed up and competed for that show and did fairly well in the super heavyweights. So then we were back on track.
Just to pause right there. So at that point in time, we were planning on the Masters Nationals, which was the second week in July. So at that point, we were 6 weeks out from our target show. I just want to kind of give everybody a perspective. And at the last minute, we decided, okay, let's do the Battle of the River. So we weren't planning on it. It was literally, I think was it Friday?
I dropped my daughter off at school Friday morning, and I called you on the phone, and I said, hey, you care if I stop by for a quick check-in? And I dropped that bomb on you.
Yeah.
I remember I said, what do you think, after I ran through my poses, the usual response, you shook your head, you nodded, and you said, you're good. You're exactly where we need to be right now. And I said, what do you think? What do you think about Battle of the River? And you said, what are you going down there and watch? Like, yeah, let's go. And I was like, well, not exactly.
I was already going because I had other people on the show.
I said, well, not exactly. I was thinking about competing. And you said, why? It does nothing for you. Why would you do that? And I just said, well, I'm kind of bored. I'm stagnant. I need some excitement. So this was Battle of the River at this point was 5 weeks from Masters Nationals. And then the North Americans was exactly a month after Masters Nationals. And in between is the Tennessee State Championships. And I wound up doing all of those shows. To put, this long drawn out story into a nutshell, the Battle of the River, the on the whim show 5 weeks out, from my first national showing was a really good look for me. I was really happy with that look. I felt full, and I had good enough conditioning to be very competitive. I had striated glutes at 5 weeks out. That's something that not too many people can say. But that was a really good look. Shortly after that, my body kind of took I guess a little bit of a turn for the worse. And you would have to have me to point it out to show it to you, but I'd suffered some really bad digestive issues was going on. And
people wouldn't believe it if we told them, but it was onions and peppers.
I eat something different out of my protocol, and I added onions and peppers and I don't know why I did that. I did it because I wanted to taste different, my food, which is really odd because
which I was fine with. That's not like you broke protocol.
No, I just wanted to add something different, and that can be a topic for another podcast. Is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Eliminate variables.
Don't if what you're doing works, then don't change and don't stray from it. Because I suffered digestive issues from that, and I was not able to pull it back and jump on the problem and fix the problem until after that season was over with. So there in my next several shows, I had digestive issues. I had a bloated midsection, and it wasn't as tight and as small as it usually is. And I could see it, and it messed with me really bad. Like it got into my my mental frame of mind, and it really messed me up.
Having said that, though, at the state show, at the prejudging state show specifically, that was the in terms of conditioning, that was the best conditioning that you had achieved to date.
Yeah.
You weren't as full as you were in Chattanooga, but definitely the conditioning was there at the prejudging, and at that point I knew it was just a matter of tweaking the formula just a little bit to get you a little more full, and that's what we ended up doing, this year.
You're exactly right. My conditioning at the 2023 Tennessee State Championships, which was 2 weeks after North Americans, and 2 weeks before the Tennessee State show, Masters Nationals. Masters Nationals was 2 weeks before the Tennessee State Championships. That was my first national showing, and I placed fourth. And I was okay with that. I was happy with that. I felt that was very, very competitive for a first national showing. I was a little off. There was, cortisol had gotten me. I was a little watery, but still very competitive to be on that level, I feel like. And leaving that show, and 2 weeks later going to Chattanooga for the Tennessee State, we tightened up on that. Managed to bring me in a little bit sharper, and that was my best conditioning. So from that point to North Americans, there was about a 2.5 week time period there where I was my absolute best. And you even said it, we need to take this to North Americans. Well, lo and behold, there during that 2 weeks, my body started changing again. And it was rejecting everything that we were doing, and we didn't change anything because we wanted to take that look right there to North Americans, and so we didn't do anything different. But my body was different from one day to the next. It was different. I would wake up in the morning, and I would be ready, and then 2 days later, I would look at myself and think, God, what have I done? What has happened to me? What is going on? And I think we just.
And I remember thinking that when I looked at you at your check-ins, it's like, and even the pictures you would send me sometimes. I mean, sometimes you were there, sometimes you weren't.
Yeah.
And we had talked about that. Ultimately, we didn't do blood work at that specific time. We obviously do blood work periodically through every prep that we do, but I feel it was your liver giving you trouble because you started having some of the same feelings that you had this year with the constant lethargy. I mean, of course you're going to be tired in a prep, but you were like, you would wake up tired. It didn't matter if you napped or whatever, you would wake up tired. So that would, that's a really good lesson that we learned. And going into compounds now, we eliminated trenbolone this year when you started having those issues. And I feel like last year your liver had just, it had had it.
It had it. My body in general had had it. 5 shows in a calendar year, I would never suggest that to anybody. I will never do that again. I did it just because I knew that I could do it. And it winded up kicking me in the balls. By the time North Americans got here, a week out from North Americans, from day to day, I knew I had a 50-50 shot of showing up ready for the North Americans. So I get to North Americans, and I contract an upper respiratory infection. It right at the day that I flew in there, and it hit me hard. And so I remembered buying some tussin syrup to do whatever I could to stop the leakiness from my head and to alleviate some of the pressure in my sinuses. And I said, well, this is probably not going to be good for me. But, you know, do I go up there leaking on stage with a massive headache, or, you know, can I take a little bit of this to see if this might help? And so that was one thing that I'm sure, you know, was against me.
Possibly.
But other than that, my body was done. It was over. It was over everything. It was tired. It was tired of competing. It was tired of peaking for shows and then wanting to be done, but not being done, and me pushing it further to another show. It was over it. So 2023 North Americans, my body was shot by the time it ran around, and I was not myself. I didn't look good on stage. That's why there are no pictures of it out there.
And just to expound on that just a bit, we did exactly the same protocol for the North American peak week as we did for the state show peak week.
Yeah, so like I showed up my best with that peak week protocol and did the exact same thing, and it was 2 different bodies. It was not me.
Just proof that you were done. It didn't matter what we did. It didn't matter if we threw at your body exactly what we did the last time. It was done. So that's a lesson. Anybody out there who's thinking about competing multiple times a year, that's something you need to take into consideration, especially if you're going to be an enhanced athlete and you're going to be beating the hell out of your liver and your kidneys. There's going to be a point to where they're done.
Yeah. And
your body's not going to respond anymore, especially, you know, when you get over 35, 40 years old. That's got a lot to do with it as well. So,
and there's the mental aspect of that too, that we've talked about this before. When you compete and you do a show, your mind after that show is done, your body is done. It thinks it's done, but then it's not, and you push it further.
Right.
And you can only do that so many times before it turns around and goes south on you. But coming out of the 2023 North Americans, you had asked me at some time after that what's on the map for next year. And I told you North Americans, and I remember you come back and said, well, why not Masters Nationals? And I said, because it's personal. I'm going back to North Americans for redemption. You know, that show chewed me up and spit me out in 2023, and I had something to prove.
That's what you did. Going back to what you were saying about when you get through with the show, you're done. You're mentally done. And this is digressing a little bit onto a different subject, but the show, once you get to your show, if you've planned a show and you finally get to your show, the people who view that as the end, as that's it. Once you get to the show, you're on the other side of the show. And one of the topics we were going to cover today is off season. So here we go into that subject. If you get to the show and you have deemed that as the end, and you've been on the food porn sites and all you do is is save recipes, and you're sending junk food to everybody on Instagram all the time, and you just can't wait to eat this laundry list of food that you have saved, and it's going to be a disaster. And one of the things that I always preach to everybody on the team is to stay lean, at least a decent composition in the off season. So the more fat you gain in your off season, of course you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, as Jack Nicholson said in Batman. But the more body fat you put on, that means the more body fat you're going to have to lose when it's crunch time. So if you have gotten up to a body weight to where you have to lose 60 pounds, that is reaching a level that's absurd. And there's only one conclusion you can come to, is that mostly of what you gained is body fat.
Body fat.
Yeah, mostly of what you've gained. And if you look at the people who are at the top tier at our sport, Chris Bumstead, Urs Kalachinsky, those guys, they don't have to lose 60 pounds. They're trying to make weight. They have to make weight, and they're still only losing 30, 35 pounds at the most. So that's just, when you get to your show, always make sure you have a good reverse diet. Your coach should always set you up with a reverse diet, and make sure that you stay within a good composition during your off season, because the more out of shape you get, the harder you're going to have to work when it's crunch time.
I would venture to say not be so dependent on the scales. Go off how you look and how you feel. That's something that I've had to, come to terms with, and not be so dependent on the scales.
And if you do it right, the scales are going to come up.
That's exactly. These guys out there that are competing and feel like they've got to get up to 300 pounds.
That seems to be the number nowadays.
Seems to be the number.
Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman was 300.
Yeah.
Samson Duda's 300. Andrew Jack is 300, and they feel like they've got to get there to come down. And the bottom line is if you're losing more than 40 plus pounds, you're not big, you're fat.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. Because if you get to 300 pounds, any weight, if you get to any weight, take a picture of yourself and put it next to a 300-pound Samson Dauda, and tell me what their composition looks like next to yours, and then let me know if you feel like you're on the same level as those people. It doesn't matter what body weight you are.
No.
Compare your look to an off-season Bumstead look.
Yeah.
Or an off-season Urs look, and then tell me if you feel like you're in good enough shape.
As far as the way that in the past, I'd say probably 6-7 years that I take my off season, the approach that I take to my off season was, years ago, I looked at these pros and how they looked in the off season, and I said, well, my favorite professionals that I admire and that I look up to, they don't look too much different, right? From their off season to their stage look. And I'm sure, there's a little bit of a difference, but not much. My favorite bodybuilders that I looked up to and that I follow daily, they're veiny, they're lean, and they carry a six-pack midsection all year long. And if you mimic a professional and you live your life like a professional, you wake up in the morning, you all day, you eat, sleep, and breathe like a professional, then it's only a matter of time before you become a professional. That was my mentality. And so that's how I carried my off season. I stay close to contest shape, I still have to work hard. I don't want anybody to think that I don't work hard to get in shape, because I do. But it doesn't have to be so, grueling, and disastrous to get ready for a competition. It shouldn't have to be.
And in years past, just taking you for example, because you're sitting there. In years past, I'm talking like early on, 2010-ish to 2015-ish, you would get into a higher body fat percentage in your off season.
I did it the wrong way. Sure.
And when it came time to get in shape, you did have to do some extreme shit, right? And then you ended up not being as conditioned as you are right now. So because you hold a better composition in your off season, and you've been doing it for years now. I'm not like throwing stones here at all, but you maintain a great off season composition the last several years, and you're able to hold more muscle during your prep time, and your conditioning is light years ahead of what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And ultimately, your conditioning is what won you that pro card this year.
Most definitely.
Yeah. I mean, there was, as soon as you didn't even hit a pose yet, when you walked out on stage, and I was like, there's no comparison here.
Yeah.
It was one of those.
That was a vibe, and that's something else that we can touch on is, I remembered you telling me shortly before North Americans, man, you need to have a little more confidence. You need to go in there with some confidence, because I was just, I was tired, man, and I was bogged down, and this is a subjective sport. There's 7 judges in front of us that are trying to pick us apart, and they all have to agree,
And you also had last year on your mind,
and I had
too.
last year on my mind too. Like I could not stop thinking about 2023's North Americans, and you said, I'll never forget this. You said, you're generally the most conditioned athlete that steps on the regional stage. And I'm here to tell you that you're about to be the most conditioned athlete to step on a national stage. And I think when you told me that day, knowing the individual that you are, that you do not blow smoke, you're very real and you're very blunt, I think that resonated within me. And I started to change my mental, mindset. And, man, I started looking at myself differently, and my conditioning was so on point and was so sharp. I remember, this is a funny story. A buddy of mine that I competed against in 2023 at Masters Nationals, he and I, we've kept in touch, and he's a good friend of mine now, and we check in on each other from time to time. But he saw one of the comparison photos that I had thrown up there on Instagram. And, I said this, and with all cockiness and arrogance aside, I didn't mean it to sound like that, but it's just how it come across. But he was commenting on one of my pictures, and he sent it to my DM, so we were conversing about it in my messages. And he sent the photo, and his caption was, "You were absolutely shredded." And he was like, "You knew that when they had y'all lined up, huh?" ? And I just replied, I said, "Bro, I knew that when I got off the plane."
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
My conditioning was not going to be touched. And I knew that when I got off the plane.
That's what I was trying to convey to you. You were doubtful of yourself. And I remember you even looked a little concerned. And that's why that day I was trying to convey to you what I was seeing, because you do know me. I'm not going to say something unless it's true, and I don't give praise where it's not due at all.
Sure.
And looking at you getting ready for this show this year, I continuously told you you're new this year. You had a great off season. You put on some great tissue, and your conditioning is going to be as good, if not better, than it was last year. So you can take last year and you can forget about it.
Yeah.
So that day that I told you should carry yourself with more confidence, I knew that you were going to bring something to the national stage that was going to be hard to handle. And I was right.
You were right. You were right.
I was right.
You were right. They knew it too. And that was something else, when I was going to a show like the North Americans, which is one of the larger and more competitive of all the national shows that are out there. You can't go up there with too much confidence because it'll slap you. It'll slap you around. It really will.
Sure.
And I think that was, you caught me in the moment of, I just can't go there with that kind of confidence because I know what happened to me last year.
And this is something that I've said a few times as well. Like when you're on a regional level and everybody's lining up in your class, you can pretty much look around and say, well, he has no legs. He looks like he's 6 weeks out. He looks like he stopped at McDonald's on the way here. You know what I mean? But when you go to the national show, it's like, man, okay, he's in shape. He's in shape. He's in shape.
Everybody belongs there.
Right. Most people. I mean, every now and then you get a seed who there was one person in his class and he qualified. That's another subject we're going to get to here in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, just because you qualify for nationals doesn't mean you should go to nationals. But yeah, at nationals, when you look around at everybody backstage, most of them, 95% of them, are exactly where they're supposed to be. And you don't really know how you're going to do until you line up with everybody.
Yeah.
But having said that, as soon as you walked out on the stage and I saw you all line up in your front quarter turn, I even, Holland was sitting next to me. I said, hey, nobody's touching him. Before you even hit a pose. But you actually won the show with a torn bicep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you injured your bicep 3 weeks, 4 weeks before the show?
The state show was 2.5 weeks before North Americans. And then I competed on Saturday. And Monday, after I had gotten back home, I suffered a partial tear in the distal tear in the tendon of my bicep, which made a hellacious 2.5 weeks of trying to train for this and pose on stage for that. So, yeah, not a whole lot of, only very few people know that, and that's fine. Everybody can know that now. I'm okay with it. I didn't mention it because I didn't want attention, or I didn't want people to say, you know how people are.
Well, on the other side of it, it's not like you can say, well, I lost because I couldn't flex my bicep.
And that was another reason too. I didn't want any attention. I didn't want to seem like I was fishing for attention. But if I didn't win, I didn't want that to be the crutch either.
Right. Well, now you can say, I won a national show and I couldn't flex my biceps.
You know, it's funny because you watch me in every photo and every video that's out there, and I have the biggest smile on my face. But I'm in the worst pain that you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Trying to squeeze and hold my poses with that bicep tendon like that.
Yeah, I'm just glad you didn't attach it. It's healed up now.
Not so much, but it's getting there.
Going back to what we were saying, so with this year, you, at some point, I don't remember exactly where we were in the prep, but it was pretty early on in the prep where we had plenty of time left when you told me that you were taking naps in the middle of the day and you were still waking up tired, and even when you got out of bed in the morning, you had 8 hours of sleep, you still got up and felt like shit. It was at that point where I told you to stop taking Trenbolone, to pull Tren out of your regimen. And now, I mean, there are other people talking about it nowadays, but if you, and it's not like you lost mass when we took you off of it. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't help. Of course it helps. But if you're having problems processing it, or you see that you're having symptoms where your liver's struggling like you were, I mean, that's a classic symptom of a liver struggling, is being lethargic like that all the time. We pulled that out, and you coasted the rest of the way to the show, and obviously your conditioning continued to improve.
It improved, and I felt better.
Right.
I did. I started to feel better. Something else, that helped too was, getting blood work done frequently. I can't remember where we were at. We were somewhere around 6 to 5 weeks. And I remembered I was looking at myself, and I'm like, man, I know me, and I'm not as sharp in some places that I should be. Glutes and hams were at 5 weeks out. I typically have some noticeable cross striations, and they weren't there. And I'm like, hey man, what's going on here? I know this isn't protocol because he knows me and knows what we need to do. Why are these lines not there in these specific places? So we went and got blood work done, and my estrogen levels were high. Easy fix.
Easy fix. And it was amazing.
It was amazing.
Over 1 week.
1 week.
Yeah, amazing.
They were there. They were diced up a week later where they were supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no getting around that, man. If you don't get blood work done during your prep, anytime, if you don't get blood work regularly done, you don't have a clue what's going on in your body. But yeah, that was an easy fix, man. It's a little bit of Nolvadex, a little bit of Arimidex, and we were back in business.
Yeah.
So, and it's not like you weren't taking anti-estrogens before. We weren't taking enough.
It wasn't enough.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a little elevated. I think, what was it, 80 something?
I can't remember, but that sounds about right.
Yeah, but it didn't take much at all to get that down. I mean, like you said, within a week's time, we were. I mean, it was night and day.
It was night and day.
It was night and day. So I'm glad we got that got that nipped in the bud when we still had plenty of time. But into the next subject, just touched on it a minute ago. So if you go to a regional show and you place top 2 and you qualify for nationals, this is the point where you need somebody around you, whether it be a coach, whether it be somebody who has a trained eye, whether you go talk to the judges, because the judges, they'll shoot you straight as well, usually. But just because you qualify for a national show does not mean you are ready for a national show, because like I said a minute ago, when you get backstage and you start looking around at everybody, you don't want to be that person who doesn't belong. And if you competed in a regional show and there were 2 or 3 people in your class and you just happened to make first or second, you need somebody with a trained eye to look at your pictures and give you an honest opinion, because the last thing you want to do, I promise you, is, I mean, what do you think, $2,000 at least that you're going to throw?
If you do it right, the way you need to do it, this year's North Americans was a $5,000 trip. If you can cut costs wherever to make things a little easier, it's minimal. You're at $2,500, and that's going to be on the light end. It costs money to do these shows on a national level, and it's, this is more so for the younger generation out there, the newer and upcomers that are competing now, and that have won some regional shows. We just had the 2024 Night of Champions. That was a phenomenal show. I had a lot of several good buddies that did that show and did well. And for some of them and for the newer generation, I feel it's a good place for 2 of the old guys like us to offer some advice. And it couldn't be better said than what you said when you started this. Good buddy of ours, Ryan Walters, showed me one time years ago a list of rules for bodybuilder and competitive bodybuilders. And this list of rules was put out there by the MC of the Olympia, who is an ex-competitor himself, IFBB Pro, and he's in the Hall of Fame, Bob Ciccarello. Now, I can't tell you any of the other rules, and I think it was a list of 25, but the one that stuck out to me the most, and Ryan Walters showed me this, was just because you qualify for nationals doesn't mean that you're ready to go to nationals. That couldn't be better said. And it's not that anybody's trying to downgrade you or insult you as a competitor, but more for the mental aspect of you thinking that it's going to be somewhat similar to the same, and it's not. It's not the same competition. It's a bigger competition. It's steep. The competition is incredibly intense there. And if you go there with the expectation that you're going to do well or maybe even win, and you don't do well at all, what that could do to you mentally,
Yeah. And financially. Yeah.
Because you've just thrown that money away. And I've seen guys do it, throw that money away.
And that's really what it is. On the national level, if you're not top 5, you're not posing.
No.
So if you go to the show, you go to the prejudging, you've spent money on your plane ticket or your gas money, whether you drive or whether you fly, you've spent at least $1,500 on somewhere to stay, your food, your travel expense. You've spent several $1,000s here, and you've gone to a prejudging only. You didn't get a top call out. You don't even go back to the finals. You don't even get seen at the finals unless it's in a group and you're out there just with a group for literally 5 seconds. So bottom line, moral of the story, have somebody that knows what they're looking at, look at you, and just be honest with you. And like he said, it's not a dig at you. Nobody's saying that you won't get there one day, or you very well could be one of those people who hit a home run and you just genetically gifted. But if you are or aren't one of those people, have somebody look at you and let you know. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. And make sure that your coach is an honest enough person and not going to send you there to continue to collect a paycheck.
Sure.
Because that happens a lot too.
Sure.
I see that often.
There are those two.
Yeah. There are coaches that will send their athletes to national shows that have no business there just to continue to collect a paycheck. Mm-hmm. And that's not cool.
Going back to your pro win. We both started bodybuilding around the same time. I started in 2002 and you started in 2003.
Yep.
Like it was to the day, the next year, the stage show. So we competed both for 20 years. I was 20, I think you were 21, 22. Mm-hmm. And then you finally get your card. That was a moment. That was a moment for me. I was just as proud of you as I was of me when I got my pro card 2 years ago. But I was damn proud of you. But that was a great moment for us together as brothers, as best friends. And I was out in the lobby, and I was excited that you got your card, but we knew you had to compete the next day.
Yeah.
So when I said, "Hey, let's get some pictures," the look on your face, it was like, "Oh, okay." You knew we needed to do it, but at the same time, you were tired of shit. You wanted to go back to your room, but we took a really nice picture, and a picture turned out that not quite like you thought it was going to turn out.
Right.
In a good way.
In a good way. So here's the story behind the picture. So there were a lot of photos, stage photos and candids that I threw out there on Instagram. And there's one of those photos in particular that is probably my favorite. And probably one of the most epic pictures that I feel like has ever been taken of me in my whole bodybuilding career. And to tell you the story behind it, let me just say that I had competed all day. I was hungry, I was tired, and I had a torn bicep tendon. And so I'm also in pain. I'm hurting. And
I'm hurting, Linda.
I'm hurting, Linda. You know better to talk to me like that when I'm hurting. So, when I come off stage, I had done several different classes, and I'd come off stage. It'd been a long day, and one of the biggest ones was hunger. I was hungry, and I wanted to relax. And so, but I also know how important that moment is to capture some photos. And you were not going to let me get out of there without capturing some of this memorable moment, which, thank you for that. But mentally in my head, I did not want to take any pictures. So that's where I was at mentally, right then and right there. we had left, we had come out of the auditorium, and we were in the hallway of the lobby, and they had the North American Championships banner. You know, that's where everybody can stop by and they can take their photos or whatever. And you know, I've got the pro card, I've got the medal and the trophy, and I'm ready to go lay down. I'm ready to eat. I'm hungry. Last thing I want to do is take some pictures. But you said we need to get some pictures right here in front of this banner. And you did. You snapped a couple, and I'm like, in my head, I'm just mentally over it. And one of those photos, I would never in a million years, I guess, but it turned out to be probably my favorite picture ever. And it's the one where you're like, hit a pose, and I didn't really know, didn't feel like hitting a pose. I didn't know what pose to hit, and so I had kind of, corrected my classic pose a little bit. And it was the one. This photo is the one where I've got my maroon hat on backwards, and I am setting like I'm fixing to hit my classic pose, and I just so happened to be looking down at my pro card when I hit it, and you snapped it at the precise moment, and I felt like shit. I was tired. I was hungry. Didn't want to take pictures, but you captured a moment that'll never be forgotten for me, and that's probably one of my favorite pictures. And I've got that thing blowed up to a poster in my place and on my wall.
I done it deliberate.
Done it deliberate. He done it deliberate.
Let's talk about how Chris Bumstead is going to the open division.
Yeah.
Here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, let's do that.
We've never really gabbed about bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Banter back and forth.
Yeah, let's do that.
So yeah, Chris Bumstead, open bodybuilding at the EVLS Prague. Isn't that what it's called? It's the Prague show. I think it's EVLS. Say that 5 times fast. Martin Fitzwater, he's 4th in the world right now at the Mr. Olympia, in the open division Mr. Olympia. And the only people ahead of him are Samson, Derek, and Hottie. So Bumstead is about to go against number 4 in the world.
4 in the world. And he's got some other heavy hitters in there too. You know, the Horse MD fella, and then
I saw his pictures. He looks great.
If he brings his conditioning, he's tough, man. Big old boy. And then the guy who was the ex-champ in the 212 division is stepping up into the
Sean
other.
Clarita.
Sean Clarita. Now this is a dude who's not hurting for conditioning.
He's turned inside out.
And this is a fella that definitely what he lacks in height and size makes up for it in conditioning. So that ought to be really interesting to see.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that a lot. There was even some talk about Ramon getting in there with him. Did you see that?
No,
yeah.
I didn't see that.
There's some talk about it. There's some, I don't know if it's true or not.
It
seems like a rumor, but that would be interesting to see. And let's talk about what if Bumstead wins?
What if?
If I were Bumstead, which I'm a far cry from Bumstead, let's be honest here. But if I went to an open show and I beat the bodybuilder who I knew was 4th in the world, there is no chance I wouldn't compete on that open stage the following year.
I feel that 100%. And I follow him on his social media and his YouTube, and I watch his YouTube channel, and his most recent one that he posted last night or this morning, I watched, and he's talking about expectations and about how he doesn't have any expectations, and that he just wants to finish out here and that he's done. And I'm gonna tell you, man, I feel that if he goes up there and does very well, it's gonna be hard for him to not have that wonder. I get it. He's got a new baby. He wants to, he wants to cut loose and do life with his family and his wife and his child and everything. But it's going to be hard for him not to wonder what could I do at the Mr. O.
Sure. And it was very brief, and it was literally the last thing he said at one of his most recent YouTube videos. But after you and I had this conversation the first time, and I said, what if he wins? Why would he not do the Open?
Yeah.
He actually said his last sentence in a YouTube video, he said, if I win, maybe I'll do the Open next year.
Yeah, he kept saying maybe.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
But probably not.
Yeah.
And I'll retire. Maybe.
Yeah.
He kept saying that. He was teetering back and forth.
And I feel like it might be a Adrian and Rocky moment. Like if he goes back home after he wins,
Yeah.
and Courtney says, "I just want you to do one thing for me, win." And then he's just,
And then he perks up.
yeah.
and cue the music.
The Rocky
training
music. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Cue Eye of the Tiger. and then we go into his training.
That would be great.
But I think that'll be a good one. And, I'm anxious to see who's going to step in now that he's out of Classic and who's going to take and be the new kid on the block on the Classic physique level. There's some good looking guys.
That's a good question. I was really pleased with Urs. I don't, when I say the word finally, I'm not, this isn't a dig at him, but he was kind of showing up looking the same for a couple of years. But he finally put some good quality size on his upper body, and it showed. And he even moved past Dino.
Yeah.
So that was a win for him, even though Mike snuck out of nowhere.
That guy snuck out of nowhere. Urs is still has my favorite physique. Not partial to the taller fellas, obviously, but Mike kind of snuck out of nowhere. Great shape for a guy his height. Great conditioning. Looks great. There's a couple of other ones that I felt like got overlooked.
I feel like that too.
Yeah.
And Wesley was, man, and I wish, Wesley, he's this big YouTube sensation now. He probably doesn't give a rat's ass what I or you think.
Yeah.
But I know what I'm looking at. I've been doing this a long time. I'm older than he is. If he could learn how to control his midsection, it's like he's doing a vacuum, but he's pulling it in, but he's not really doing a vacuum. But he never actually engages his abs at all in any pose, not even in an ab and thigh pose.
Yeah.
And that's his problem. I mean, of course, everybody's got something they need to work on.
Sure.
He needs to bring his legs up a little bit, but as far as like the wow factor when you hit a front double bicep, I feel like Wesley's front double bicep, he has Arnold Schwarzenegger arms.
I feel like Wesley has all the tools, and I feel like what's holding him back is his display, his posing.
For sure.
I've just recently had this conversation with a couple of buddies of mine that competed at the Night of Champions. Posing can be better, and something that's a big deal and you don't think it is, but you can have the best physique. But if you don't know how to display it, then you're going to get beat. At some point, you're going to get beat. If you got two guys that are standing next to each other that are equal in muscularity and equal in conditioning, they're one guy can't hold his mud up there and is huffing and puffing and can't pose worth a shit, but the other guy's effortless and is fluid with his poses. It's going to come down to the better poser. And the posing hurt him a little bit. I noticed in his rear shots, and I had this same conversation with a buddy of mine who did fairly well in the Classic division. He had noticeable glute striations, but he wasn't engaging them when he was hitting his rear poses.
Oh, that's Wesley too.
Wesley, and I believe that it's because Wesley and Urs share the same coach now. I think it's something in the coaching. He's being instructed to do this. But when you hit your rear pose, if you have glute striations, then you pull your hips forward, and that shows your cross striations in your glutes. If you don't have them, then you almost push your butt and put your butt out to show the lower back
and more hamstrings.
Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, a level of conditioning that is virtually impossible to get to is the level of conditioning that brings out cross striations in your glutes. And if you have them, the way that you engage those glutes is you pull your hips forward and you squeeze. He's not doing that. Mm-hmm. He's pushing his hips out and his butt back, and they're not engaging. Mm-hmm. But he's got them, because you can see it when he transitions into other poses. They're moving.
Sure.
And they're showing.
And some people just don't have good striated glutes. Dennis Wolf, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
he never had striated glutes at all.
One of the best physiques I've ever seen.
Sure. He was a pile of muscle, and he was nasty conditioned.
Nasty conditioned.
He just didn't have striated glutes.
Just didn't have them. That's that's genetics do play a role in that.
But going back to what you were saying about being able to display your physique, it's just a thought that I had. And it's something that I get asked every single show where I have somebody who does a posing routine. They always ask me, the posing routine really doesn't matter, right? And my response has become, well, I'll give you a scenario. Here's my scenario. So let's say that you won your class. You went to the pre-judging. Obviously, we know that the judging is 99.9% of the time done at pre-judging. It's very rare that they recompare. Sometimes they do. I've seen it done a couple of times regionally.
Yeah.
I was actually part of that one time. But usually, you're judging over. You won your class. You go to the night show, and you just don't give a shit about your posing routine. And let's say you won the heavyweight class. You go out there, you do a half-ass posing routine, but the light heavyweight came out, and he nailed it. He did something graceful, something artistic. He really displayed his physique. The super heavyweight did the same thing. And then there you are in the middle. You put a half-ass effort into your posing routine. That is the last impression that you can give to the judges before you're in the overall pose down. So as a judge, and I sat on the judge panel a few times. This has been 10 years ago now. You coaches can't judge anymore, and I think that's a great rule as a side note. But as a judge, if I'm looking at the posers up there going through their posing, or the bodybuilders, competitors go through their posing routines, that affects me. That affects my decision. And if you can put something into your posing routine that isn't half-ass, and you leave a good impression with the judges, that's going to carry over into the overall, for sure.
For sure.
So that's my opinion on that.
Posing's a big deal. It's a display of what you've created. And there's far too often, there's so many guys out there that have, and I say guys, I mean, posing goes for, females as well, stage presence when it comes to bikini and wellness and figure and all that stuff. Posing's a big deal. If you don't have that confidence, and if you can't pose, I just don't feel like you're going to get to where you want to be. You have to learn how to gain that confidence. Whether you have it or not, fake it till you make it.
Speaking of posing routines, I know a certain IFBB pro who just did the guest posing at the Night of Champions, and it was definitely different, and it was awesome to see you and Lily Sue up there together. I know that.
Thank you.
I know. I mean, not many people at that show have interacted with Lily Sue like I do on a regular basis, but her little personality it's awesome for anybody who's never been around her. She is. I mean, obviously she's gorgeous. Anybody can see that, but she is witty. She is smart. And that was awesome to see you two up there doing that together.
Thank you. That was, and again, being a new IFBB pro in the Tennessee, that was a really big honor and huge for me. And very blessed to be able to do that. They don't ask all the new IFBB pros in Tennessee to do that. And so that there is a lot of pressure there, and the pressure, but also a blessing, and very fortunate to be asked to that. Alan, our buddy, our chairman in the NPC Tennessee, told me a long time ago that he always loved my posing, and no matter what he was doing, if he would try to stop what he was doing at my turn to pose so that he could watch me. And I've just always taken pride in that. And I wanted to give the people in the NPC Tennessee community something that they've never seen before, and I feel like I delivered.
Absolutely. You've always been, even more so than me. I mean, I do now. I put more into my posing routines now, but even before I started to, you always put a little something extra into your posing, and it shows. I mean, you're a great poser. You display your physique well, and you move well on stage. Very artistic, very graceful type of posing. So.
Bodybuilding is an art, and that's what you do. Just one more thing to show the artistic side of this sport, and I feel like that has gotten. I feel like we were losing that for a while. We were losing that artistic side of it. It became just a meat contest, there for a while. But with the addition of classic physique, I feel like that is something that
Classics
came
brought it back.
It's brought it back.
Classics brought it back
because bodybuilders are now getting into their routines and working harder on their poses, and I just love to see that.
That's one thing about your boy Urs.
Yes,
he always has a great routine.
Always,
yeah,
beautiful poser, man. And when I go to the regional shows, when I go to national shows, I watch these shows, and when I'm a spectator on the other side, I like to see good posing.
Sure.
And I always say that, I get up on the edge of my seat, and I did it at the Night of Champions because I sat out there and I watched all of that show, and I'm like, I want to see some posing. I want to see some posing. Let's see it. What you got? And I will pick out my favorites. And I'll be like, man, that's one of my favorite posers right there. He's got my vote.
Now
so,
that's what I call posing.
Yeah.
Franco the Bat. Yeah, the way you move, kind of Ed Corney-ish.
I mimic the older.
Sure.
The movements.
Real slow, real graceful kind of movements. But we digressed hard on that one. We completely flew off the subject. So who's winning? Is CBUM going to win? Or is Martin going to beat him? I mean, Horse MD, I feel like he's one of those guys that looks really great in his pictures.
Leading up to.
Yeah.
But doesn't show up and he looks different.
Or I don't know if it's that or if he's just taking these photos in really great lighting. I don't know. All I know is that Martin for sure is fourth in the world. Right behind Derek.
Yeah.
And, the wild, I guess we'll call Horse MD the wild card here.
Yeah.
And then CBUM is coming out of the classic into the open.
Well, conditioning wise, he's going to be hard to trump.
But on that note, he's also going to be a lot heavier.
He's going to be heavier. So some of that conditioning is going to be sacrificed. I don't think that we'll see I don't foresee the sharpness and the crispness of Chris Bumstead on a classic win. I don't know that we'll see that, but we're definitely going to see a bigger and fuller Chris, a more muscular.
And because he's fuller, he may look more conditioned.
It may. I mean,
there may be deeper lines there. You never know.
That's always that fine line, man. Filling up too much, is it going to make you spill? Is it going to make you more conditioned? Do you sacrifice a little bit of conditioning to be fuller? Do you sacrifice a little, it's a little bit of size to be conditioned?
How's your digestion?
Ah,
did you take a shit?
Yeah.
Nighttime or the morning of the show? If you didn't, do we need to eat more? Should we not eat at all because your waistline may be affected?
That's
where the other eye comes in.
Yes.
To make those decisions for you, so you don't have to stress out about it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And another thing, bouncing back to the guest posing routine. That's something that I hadn't told too many people, but I won my pro card 9 weeks before that routine.
Mm-hmm.
And, you and I have made a name for ourselves in this state as far as conditioning goes. And
during off season as well.
During the off season as well. And so the closer that I got to the guest posing at the Night of Champions, the more the pressure started to hit me, like, hey, I'm not in contest shape here, right? I won my pro card 9 weeks ago. I'm not in North Americans shape here.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to let anybody down. And Alan even told me. He said, man, there's no pressure. You don't have to be in phenomenal shape. He's like, I know you're usually good. But listen, the pressure of being a new IFBB pro in the state of Tennessee and being asked to guest pose at an event, you need to be in shape.
Sure.
And the pressure was real. And the closer that I got to it, I was just like, okay, am I going to represent here? Am I going to do well? And bring a good level of conditioning? And I was told I'm going to pull him back in here, bringing up our good buddy Ryan Walters.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan reached out to me and he said, number one, he was like, the dad-daughter thing got me. But two, he was like, man, that was a perfect balance of conditioning and fullness. He's
sure.
Like, good guest posing. Great guest posing.
It was a very good guest posing composition, especially to be 9 weeks. Because going back to what we were saying earlier, you got, not only were you on the other side of a show, it's like you had reached a lifelong goal of yours.
Yes.
And it's like you could kind of take a breath and you could kind of let go a little
let
bit,
loose, but
at the same time you can't.
No,
you can't let it all go.
And I if going back and looking at it now, I feel like my stomach was a little full. I probably ate more than I should have, but I tried to keep everything within reason, and I feel like all in all, I brought a good level of conditioning for a guest posing.
It was a good balance, and so I was standing there with RJ and Nicholas Morrell. I honestly don't know how you pronounce his last name.
I call him Baby Hulk.
Yeah, I was standing there with Baby Hulk and RJ, and that was one of the things Nicholas said. He said, man, I've never seen Austin that full before. It's like I'm always seeing him drawn down and depleted and conditioned, but he said something about the combination of fullness and conditioning that you brought. So, man, you represented great. You still could see some lines in your glutes when you turned around. I mean, of course you're not going to be, crispy as you were at North Americans. You're not supposed to be 9 weeks after a show, but you still had plenty abs, plenty lines, plenty separation, and you hit a home run with the posing routine. And Lily Sue being out there was definitely something to see.
That was
I enjoyed that.
Memorable moment for sure. She was very excited to do that, and I think us keeping that under wraps and surprising everybody with that was a really cool thing, because I was excited about it and I wanted to let everybody know about it, but I didn't. But she was very, very excited about it.
I think it was better left a surprise.
Yeah,
I feel like that was a good surprise for everybody.
Yeah, I think when the MC announced, new IFBB Pro Austin Jones and his workout partner Lily Jones, I think that when they saw us walk out together, I think it was like, and I could just imagine, being a spectator, like whatever's going on, it's a bodybuilding competition. There's a lot going on the other side. I feel like people stopped what they were doing to see what was about to happen. For that. Yeah. So, and like I said, I just wanted to give the Tennessee bodybuilding community something that I feel like they've never seen before, and I wanted to put on a good show for everybody.
And also a memory that you'll never forget.
I'll never forget.
You
that.
won't, and she won't either.
No.
Yeah.
She was so excited and so happy to do that. So.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I mean, wrapping up. Obviously, I've told you this 100 times, but I'm proud as hell of you.
Thank you.
You represent classic physique well. You obviously represent the team well, with the way that you look, obviously, but as well as the way that you carry yourself and represent yourself. So, kudos to you, hats off to you, respect to you.
Thank you.
Lots of love to you from brother to brother. And
love you too.
Yeah.
Hopefully I represent the IFBB well, and hopefully we'll see how I can't represent in the future.
Yeah. Remember what in Bloodsport? What was that? What was that guy's name that he buddied up with? And
Jackson.
Remember what Jackson said to Frank Dukes? Don't be so cocky. You might have to go up against me next time.
Yes.
But don't you get too cocky, because you might have to go up against me next time.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be something.
Be something.
But anyway, we will see how that goes.
We'll see how that
year.
goes. Could it be 2025? Coach and the Prodigy standing there.
Yeah. And also what Arnold said, it's not that hard for me to give him the wrong advice.
So it's not that hard for me to give him the wrong advices.
You know I would never do that.
No, I know.
I wouldn't want to compete against anything but your
Lord,
best.
Well, I'll be the Franco Columbo. And you
Yeah,
be the Arnold.
just a bit taller.
Just a little taller.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. But anyway. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Clint Norris and Austin Jones, newest IFBB Pro. Y'all take care.